The bullet that grazed Olivia Winters's shoulder in the spring of 1878 was meant for someone else, but that detail seemed unimportant as she pressed her hand against the bleeding wound and stumbled through the dusty streets of Clifton, Arizona territory. She had been standing outside the general store when two men started shooting at each other over a card game gone wrong, and now she was paying the price for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The blood seeped between her fingers as she tried to make it back to the boarding house where she worked as a cook, an occasional seamstress, her vision blurring with each step. A strong arm caught her before she collapsed completely, and she looked up into the concerned face of a man she had seen around town but never spoken to. He had dark hair that needed cutting, stubble along his jaw, and eyes the color of weathered leather that held both kindness and something harder earned through years of living rough. "Madam, you are bleeding badly." "Let me help you," he said, his voice steady and calm despite the urgency of the situation. Olivia wanted to protest, to say she could manage on her own as she always had, but her legs gave out and she found herself being carried toward the doctor's office. She was vaguely aware of people staring, of someone shouting about getting the sheriff, of the warmth of the stranger's chest against her cheek as he moved quickly through the crowded street. Dr. Harrison was a gruff man in his 60s who had seen everything the frontier could throw at a person. He cleared his examination table with one sweep of his arm, sending papers fluttering to the floor, and the stranger laid Olivia down gently before stepping back. "Bullet went clean through," the doctor announced after a quick examination. "You are lucky, young lady." A few inches to the right, and we would be having a very different conversation. The stranger had not left. Olivia could see him standing by the door, his hat in his hands, watching as the doctor cleaned and bandaged her wound. She gritted her teeth against the pain, refusing to cry out even when the alcohol the doctor used to clean the wound burned like hellfire itself. "Thank you," she managed to say to the stranger once the doctor had finished. "You did not have to help me." "Could not very well let you bleed out in the street," he replied, and there was something in his tone that suggested he had seen too many people do exactly that. Dr. Harrison looked between them with shrewd eyes. "She is going to need someone to check on her for the next few days, make sure infection does not set in. You got people who can do that, Miss Winters." Olivia felt her stomach sink. The truth was she did not have anyone. She had come to Clifton 6 months ago after her father died, leaving her with nothing but debts she could not pay. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Crawford, was kind enough but had her own concerns and a house full of minors and drifters to manage. Olivia kept to herself mostly, worked hard, and tried not to be a burden to anyone. "I will manage," she said quietly. The stranger stepped forward. "I can check on her." Both Olivia and the doctor looked at him in surprise. "You do not even know me," Olivia protested. "Name is Cole Quinn. I work at the Copper Creek Ranch about 5 miles outside town. I am in Clifton most days anyway, picking up supplies or dropping off cattle. Would not be any trouble." Dr. Harrison nodded approvingly. "That settles it then. Miss Winters, you rest for at least 3 days before you even think about going back to work. Keep the wound clean and dry. Cole, you make sure she does not do anything foolish like trying to lift heavy pots or stretch that shoulder too much." Olivia wanted to argue, but the pain medication the doctor had given her was making her thoughts fuzzy and her eyelids heavy. She was dimly aware of Cole Quinn helping her back to the boarding house, of Mrs. Crawford fussing over her and getting her settled into her small room on the 2nd floor, of Cole promising to return the next day to check on her. When she woke the next morning, her shoulder throbbed with a deep ache that made even breathing painful. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of her window, and she could hear the sounds of the boarding house coming to life around her. Men's voices drifted up from downstairs, the clatter of dishes being washed, the creak of floorboards as people moved about. There was a soft knock on her door. "Come in," Olivia called, trying to sit up and immediately regretting it as pain shot through her shoulder. Cole Quinn entered carrying a tray with a bowl of soup and fresh bread. He looked different in the daylight, younger than she had initially thought, probably only a few years older than her own 22 years. His face was clean-shaven now, and his dark hair was damp as if he had just washed. "Mrs. Crawford said you had not eaten yet this morning," he explained, setting the tray on the small table beside her bed. "Thought you might be hungry." "You did not have to do this," Olivia said, but her stomach betrayed her by growling loudly. Cole smiled, and it transformed his whole face, softening the hard edges. "Seems like your stomach disagrees." She ate slowly while he stood by the window, giving her privacy but clearly not planning to leave until he had checked her wound as the doctor had instructed. There was something oddly comfortable about his presence, as if they had known each other longer than one chaotic afternoon. "Why are you really doing this?" Olivia asked between bites of bread. "You do not know me. I am no one important." Cole turned from the window, his expression serious. "Everyone is important, Miss Winters, and someone should look after you. Seems like maybe no one has in a while." The observation was too close to the truth, and Olivia looked down at her soup to hide the sudden sting of tears. She had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her well-being, even in this small way. After she finished eating, Cole checked her bandage with a gentleness that surprised her. His hands were calloused from ranch work but careful as he examined the wound to make sure no infection had started. "Looks good," he announced. "Doctor did a fine job. How is the pain?" "Manageable," Olivia lied. Cole gave her a knowing look. "Doctor left some laudanum for you. No shame in taking it if you need it." He stayed for a little while longer, telling her about the ranch where he worked, about the ornery cattle and the foreman who was always grumbling about something, about the monsoon rains that would come in a few months and turn the dry creek beds into rushing rivers. Olivia found herself relaxing, listening to his deep voice and watching the way his hands moved as he talked. When he finally left, promising to return the next day, Olivia felt the loneliness settle back over her like a familiar blanket. She had grown so used to being alone that she had convinced herself she preferred it that way. But now, after just a few hours in Cole Quinn's company, she was reminded of how much she had been missing. The next 3 days followed a similar pattern. Cole would arrive in the morning or early afternoon, bringing food and checking her wound. He never stayed long, always conscious of propriety and her reputation, but those brief visits became the highlight of Olivia's days. He told her stories about growing up in Texas, about learning to break horses from his father, about coming to Arizona Territory 2 years ago looking for work and finding it at Copper Creek Ranch. Olivia shared less about herself, partly because there was not much to tell and partly because she had learned that sharing too much about her circumstances often led to pity, and she hated pity. But Cole had a way of asking questions that made her want to answer, and slowly she found herself telling him about her father, a blacksmith who had been good at his trade but bad with money, about the debts that had piled up after he died, about coming to Clifton because it was far enough away from home that no one knew her story. "You should not have had to run from your father's mistakes," Cole said on the 3rd day, his jaw tight with anger on her behalf. "I did not run," Olivia corrected. "I left because there was nothing keeping me there anymore. My mother died when I was young, no siblings, no other family." Seemed like as good a time as any to start over. Is Clifton where you want to be? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. I do not know, she admitted. It is as good a place as any. Mrs. Crawford is kind and the work is steady. I suppose I could do worse. Cole looked like he wanted to say something more, but Mrs. Crawford appeared in the doorway at that moment, announcing that there was a problem with the stove downstairs, and could Miss Winters please advise on what needed to be done, injured or not. After Cole left, Olivia made her way downstairs carefully, her shoulder still painful but healing well. The stove issue turned out to be minor, just some ash buildup that needed clearing, and soon Olivia was back in her familiar role of keeping the boarding house kitchen running smoothly. Over the next few weeks, Cole continued to visit even after the doctor pronounced Olivia fully recovered. He would stop by the boarding house on his way into town or on his way back to the ranch, always with some excuse. He wanted to make sure her shoulder was truly healing or Mrs. Crawford had asked him to deliver something, or he was in the neighborhood anyway and thought he would check in. Olivia saw through the excuses but said nothing, because the truth was she looked forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit. They fell into an easy friendship. Cole would sit at the kitchen table while Olivia worked, peeling potatoes or kneading bread, and they would talk about everything and nothing. He made her laugh with stories about the mishaps at the ranch, and she found herself sharing more about her own life, including her dream of maybe one day opening her own restaurant, though she said it as a joke because it seemed so impossible. Why is it impossible? Cole asked, not laughing. Because it takes money I do not have and confidence I lost a long time ago, Olivia replied, punching down bread dough with more force than necessary. Confidence can be rebuilt, and money can be earned. You make it sound simple. Did not say it was simple, just said it was possible. One afternoon in early summer, Cole arrived at the boarding house looking troubled. Olivia was hanging laundry in the small yard behind the building when she saw him, and she knew immediately that something was wrong. What happened? She asked, setting down her laundry basket. Cole ran a hand through his hair. The ranch is cutting back. Foreman says they do not need as many hands now that the spring roundup is done. I have until the end of the week. Olivia felt her heart sink. I am sorry. I know you like that job. It is not just the job, Cole said, and the way he looked at her made her breath catch. I have been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks now, and I suppose there is no perfect time, so I am just going to say it. Olivia, these past weeks getting to know you have been the best part of my days. You are smart and strong and you make me want to be a better man. I know I do not have much to offer right now, especially with losing my job, but I would like to court you properly if you would let me. Olivia stared at him, her mind racing. She had known her feelings for Cole had grown beyond friendship, but she had not let herself believe he felt the same way. Women like her, with nothing to their name and a past full of hardship, did not get men like Cole Quinn. You do not have to answer right now, Cole continued when she did not speak. I know this is sudden and with everything going on the timing is probably wrong, but I wanted you to know how I feel. The timing is terrible, Olivia agreed, but she was smiling. And yes, you can court me. Yes, I would like that very much. The smile that broke across Cole's face was worth every hardship Olivia had ever endured. He took a step toward her, then seemed to remember himself and stopped, but the joy in his eyes was unmistakable. After that day, things changed between them in the best way. Cole found work as a temporary hand at various ranches around Clifton, taking whatever jobs were available while he looked for something more permanent. Money was tight, but he always found a way to bring Olivia small gifts, wildflowers he picked on his rides, a hair ribbon from the general store, a book of poetry he found at the trading post and thought she might like. They spent their free time together, walking along the San Francisco River that ran through town, sitting on the porch of the boarding house in the evening when the heat of the day had passed, talking about their hopes and dreams for the future. Cole told her about his plan to save enough money to buy a small piece of land and start his own ranch. Nothing grand, but enough to raise cattle and horses and build a life. Olivia shared her dream of a restaurant in more detail, describing the meals she would serve and how she would make it a welcoming place where everyone felt at home. We could combine our dreams, Cole suggested one evening as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. A ranch with a restaurant. People traveling through would need places to eat, and ranchers could use a good meal when they come to buy horses. You would want that, Olivia asked, to build something together. I would want anything if it meant building a life with you. It was the closest Cole had come to proposing, and Olivia felt her heart race with possibility. But there were practical matters to consider. Cole still did not have steady work, and Olivia's wages from the boarding house barely covered her room and board. Marriage seemed like a distant dream, something to wish for but not count on. Then in August, opportunity arrived in an unexpected form. A cattle buyer from California came through Clifton looking for experienced hands to help drive a herd from Arizona territory to the California coast. The pay was good, enough that a man could save a substantial amount if he was careful, but the drive would take at least 3 months, maybe longer. Cole came to Olivia immediately after hearing about the opportunity. "I do not want to leave you," he said, pacing in the boarding house kitchen while Olivia prepared dinner for the residents. "But the money from this drive could give us the start we need. I could come back with enough to put a down payment on land, maybe even enough to start building." "Then you should go," Olivia said, even though the thought of him being gone for 3 months or more made her chest tight with anxiety. "You would wait for me." Olivia stopped chopping vegetables and looked at him. "Cole, I have waited my whole life to feel the way I feel about you. 3 months is nothing compared to that." He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, careful of her shoulder which still ached sometimes when it rained. "When I come back, I am going to marry you, Olivia Winters, if you will have me." "That sounds like a proposal, Cole Quinn." "It is. I know I should wait until I can buy you a proper ring and do this right, but I need you to know my intentions. I need you to know that I am coming back for you." "Yes," Olivia whispered against his chest. "Yes, I will marry you." They spent every possible moment together in the week before Cole left. He introduced Olivia to some of the other cowboys who would be on the drive, good men who promised to watch his back. Olivia packed him food for the journey and mended his spare shirts, trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong on a cattle drive. Stampedes, river crossings, bandits, accidents. The morning Cole left, Olivia walked with him to the edge of town where the other drovers were gathering the herd. The cattle were restless, sensing the long journey ahead, and the air was filled with dust and the shouts of men trying to keep order. 3 months, Cole said, holding both her hands in his. "Maybe 4 at the most, and then I am coming back to you." "I will be here," Olivia promised. He kissed her then, not caring who saw, a kiss full of promise and longing and hope for the future. Then he mounted his horse, tipped his hat to her, and rode off to join the other drovers. Olivia stood watching until the herd and the men driving it were just a cloud of dust on the horizon. The next few weeks were the hardest. Olivia threw herself into her work at the boarding house, taking on extra tasks to keep her mind occupied. She cooked and cleaned and mended, and in the evenings, She worked on plans for the restaurant she and Cole had dreamed about, sketching layouts and writing down recipes, creating something concrete out of their shared hopes. Mrs. Crawford noticed her distraction and pulled her aside one morning. "That cowboy of yours is coming back, you know," the older woman said gently. "I can see it eating at you, but Cole Quinn is not the type of man to make promises he cannot keep." "I know," Olivia said. "It is just hard, waiting. Love always is. But the waiting makes the reunion sweeter." Letters started arriving about 6 weeks after Cole left. They came irregularly, carried by travelers heading east from California, and Olivia treasured each one. Cole wrote about the drive, about the landscape changing as they moved west, about the challenges they faced and the beauty they encountered. He wrote about missing her, about counting the days until he could return, about the future they would build together. Olivia wrote back whenever she could, sending her letters with anyone heading west and hoping they would reach him. She told him about life in Clifton, about the boarding house gossip, about her plans for their restaurant that were becoming more detailed with each passing day. She told him she loved him, words she had never said easily to anyone, and meant them with her whole heart. Summer turned to fall. The heat that had baked Clifton all summer began to ease, replaced by cooler mornings and evenings. The monsoon rains came and went, filling the river and turning the desert briefly green. Olivia marked time by the passing weeks, by the letters that arrived and the ones she sent, by the slowly growing amount of money she managed to save from her wages. Then in late October, nearly 4 months after Cole left, the letters stopped coming. Olivia tried not to worry at first. Mail was unpredictable, and there could be a dozen innocent reasons for the silence. But as days turned to weeks with no word, fear began to creep in. She heard stories about the drive, about how they had encountered trouble with bandits near the California border, about injuries and even deaths. No one seemed to know specifics, just rumors passed from person to person, growing more dire with each telling. Olivia found herself unable to sleep, lying awake at night imagining the worst. During the day, she went through the motions of her work mechanically, her mind always elsewhere. Mrs. Crawford watched her with worried eyes but said nothing, knowing there was nothing to say that would ease Olivia's fears. In mid-November, a man arrived at the boarding house asking for Miss Olivia Winters. He was one of the drovers who had gone on the cattle drive with Cole, a grizzled older man named Samuel who looked exhausted and trail-worn. Olivia's heart stopped when she saw him. "Cole," she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. "Is he?" "He is alive," Samuel said quickly, seeing her distress. "But he is hurt, Miss Winters. Got caught in a stampede about 6 weeks back. Broke his leg bad and took a blow to the head. We thought we were going to lose him for a while there." Olivia felt the room spin and gripped the doorframe for support. "Where is he?" "Still in California, in a town called Riverside. He is staying with a family there who took him in when he could not travel. He sent me ahead with his wages and a letter for you. He wanted me to tell you he is sorry for making you worry, but he is recovering and he will come back as soon as he can travel safely." Samuel handed her a thick envelope and a money pouch. Olivia's hands shook as she took them. "How bad is he really?" she asked. Samuel hesitated. "He was bad, Miss Winters. But Cole is tough. The doctor in Riverside thinks he will make a full recovery, but it is going to take time. His leg needs to heal proper before he can make the journey back." After Samuel left, Olivia opened Cole's letter and read it through tears. His handwriting was shaky, clearly written while he was still weak, but the words were pure Cole. He apologized for worrying her, explained what had happened, and made her promise not to try to travel to California alone to reach him. He would come back to her as soon as he could, he wrote, even if he had to crawl the whole way. The letter ended with words of love and a reminder of the promise they had made to each other. The money pouch contained everything Cole had earned on the drive. It was more than Olivia had expected, enough for the down payment on land he had talked about. The fact that he had sent it all to her, trusting her completely with his hard-earned wages, made her cry harder. Over the next weeks, Olivia received more letters from Cole, these ones written in steadier hand as he recovered. He was healing, he assured her, though the process was slower than he liked. His leg had been set properly and was mending, and the headaches from his concussion were finally fading. The family caring for him, the Johnsons, were kind people who refused to accept more than minimal payment for their help. Olivia wrote back immediately and often, telling Cole she was proud of him for being patient with his recovery, that she was guarding his money carefully, that she missed him desperately, but would wait as long as it took. She included drawings of the restaurant plans in some letters, wanting to keep their dream alive and give him something to look forward to. Christmas came and went quietly. Olivia spent the day working at the boarding house, preparing a special meal for the residents. She thought about Cole constantly, wondering how he was spending the holiday, hoping he knew how much she loved him. In early January, a telegram arrived. Cole was well enough to travel and would be starting back to Clifton within the week. Olivia read the telegram so many times the paper became soft and worn at the creases. She marked the calendar, calculating when he might arrive, and began counting down the days all over again. He rode into Clifton on a cold afternoon in late January, 5 months after he had left. Olivia was sweeping the front porch of the boarding house when she saw him, and the broom clattered to the ground as she ran to meet him. Cole dismounted carefully, favoring his right leg, and caught her as she threw herself into his arms. "You came back," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Did you doubt I would?" Cole asked, holding her tight. "Every single day, but I waited anyway." They stood holding each other in the middle of the street, neither caring about the spectacle they were making. Olivia pulled back just enough to look at him, taking in the changes 5 months had wrought. He was thinner, his face more lined, and she could see the shadow of pain in his eyes when he shifted his weight. But he was alive and he was here, and that was all that mattered. Over the next days, Cole told her the full story of what had happened. The stampede that had nearly killed him, the terrible weeks of recovery when he had been out of his mind with fever, the kindness of the Johnson family who had nursed him back to health. He told her about the long journey back, traveling slowly because of his leg, and the single thought that had kept him going through all of it, getting back to her. "There were times I thought I might not make it," Cole admitted one evening as they sat together in the boarding house parlor. "Times when the pain was so bad I wanted to give up. But then I would think about you waiting for me, about the promises I made, and I would find the strength to keep going." "I am so glad you did," Olivia whispered, holding his hand tightly. "There is something I need to tell you, though," Cole continued, his expression growing serious. "My leg, it healed well enough, but it is not what it was. I walk with a limp now, and I cannot do the same kind of hard ranch work I used to. The foreman at Copper Creek Ranch made it clear there is no job waiting for me there anymore." "Then we will figure out something else," Olivia said firmly. "We have the money you earned on the drive. We have our plans. We can still build our dream, Cole. Maybe just differently than we originally thought." Over the next weeks, they began putting their plans into action. They found a small piece of land about 2 miles outside Clifton, near enough to town to be accessible but far enough out to have space for a modest ranch. The property had a creek running through it and a small existing structure that had once been a line shack for a larger ranch. It was not much, but it was theirs, or would be once they finished the paperwork and made the down payment. Cole and Olivia decided to marry before starting the work of building up the property. It was a small ceremony at the church in Clifton, attended by Mrs. Crawford and a handful of friends they had made in town. Olivia wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and Cole stood tall beside her despite the cane he now needed for longer distances. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Cole kissed her, Olivia felt happier than she ever thought possible. They moved into the line shack the day after the wedding, both of them laughing at how much work the place needed. The roof leaked, the walls needed chinking, and there was more dirt than floor in some places. But it was theirs, and they set about making it a home with determination and joy. Cole could not do the heavy physical labor he once had, but he was skilled at planning and could still work with horses and cattle if he was careful. They used part of their remaining money to buy a few head of cattle and 2 good horses. Olivia continued her cooking, but now she was working toward their larger goal. She made arrangements with the general store in Clifton to supply baked goods twice a week, establishing a reputation for her cooking that would serve her well later. The work was hard and the hours long, but they faced it together. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of their little shack and watch the sun set over the mountains, planning the future. Cole wanted to breed horses, focusing on quality over quantity since he could not manage a large herd alone. Olivia still dreamed of her restaurant, but now she envisioned something attached to the ranch, a place where travelers could stop for a good meal and maybe stay the night if needed. Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers that turned the desert into a carpet of color. Olivia discovered she was pregnant in early April, and the news filled both of them with joy and a renewed sense of purpose. They would be bringing a child into this life they were building, and they wanted to make sure it was a good life, one worth living. Cole threw himself into improving the ranch despite his limitations. He hired day laborers when needed for the heavy work he could not do himself, and slowly their little property began to take shape. He built a proper corral and a small barn, and Olivia planted a kitchen garden with vegetables and herbs. The line shack was expanded and improved, becoming a snug 3-room cabin that felt like a real home. Olivia's reputation as a cook continued to grow. In addition to her arrangement with the general store, she began taking special orders for events and celebrations in Clifton. The money she earned went directly into their savings, earmarked for the restaurant that was still part of their long-term plans. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Cole turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I have been thinking about a lot lately." Olivia felt a flutter of concern. "What is it?" "Before the accident, before I met you, I did not think much about my life. I just moved from one job to the next, one day to the next, not really planning for anything beyond the immediate future. I was not unhappy exactly, but I was not really living either." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Then I helped you that day you were shot, and everything changed. You changed everything for me, Olivia. You made me want more, made me believe I could have more. And when I was lying in that bed in California, broken and in pain, I made myself a promise. I promised that if I survived, if I made it back to you, I would never take a single day for granted again. I would tell you every day how much I love you and how grateful I am that you waited for me." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "You do not have to say this." "Yes, I do. Because when I was gone, I worried that you might think I had forgotten about you, that you might give up on us. And I need you to know that forgetting you would be like forgetting to breathe. It is impossible. You are part of me now, woven into everything I am and everything I want to be. Even when I was out of my mind with fever, even when I could not remember my own name, I remembered you. You were the constant in all that darkness, the light I was moving toward. Cole, Olivia whispered, unable to find words adequate to express what she felt. I know life has been hard for you. I know you expected people would forget you, that you would just fade into the background of other people's lives. But I am telling you right now, that will never happen with me. I see you, Olivia. I see your strength and your kindness and your dreams, and I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how important you are, how loved you are. Olivia was crying openly now, but they were good tears, healing tears. She had spent so much of her life feeling invisible and unimportant, convincing herself that being forgotten was inevitable. But Cole was right. He saw her in a way no one else ever had, and he loved her not despite her past hardships, but as part of the whole person she was. I love you, she said, the words feeling both inadequate and completely true. I love you so much it sometimes scares me. Do not be scared, Cole said gently. We have each other, and that is all we need to face whatever comes. Their son was born in December, a cold winter day when the wind howled around the cabin and Olivia thought she might die from the pain. But Mrs. Crawford was there, serving as midwife, and Cole held her hand through it all, his own face pale but his presence steady and comforting. When they finally heard the baby's first cry, Olivia thought it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. They named him Thomas, after Cole's father, and he was a healthy, lusty baby who seemed determined to make his presence known. Cole was a devoted father from the first moment, staying up with Olivia during the long nights when Thomas would not sleep, changing diapers without complaint, and marveling at every tiny thing their son did. The first year of Thomas's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless work, but also profound joy. The ranch continued to grow slowly but steadily. Cole's reputation as a horse breeder began to spread, and people started coming from surrounding areas to buy his horses. He had an eye for quality and a gentle way with the animals that made them easy to train and sell. Olivia's cooking business expanded as well. She now supplied 3 different stores in Clifton and had a regular clientele for her baked goods. She also began serving meals from their cabin a few times a week, and travelers quickly learned that the Quinn Ranch was a good place to stop for food and hospitality. It was not the full restaurant she had dreamed of, but it was a start, and it was working. When Thomas was 2 years old, Olivia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter Sarah arrived on a beautiful spring morning when the wildflowers were in full bloom. She was smaller than Thomas had been, but just as healthy, with her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes. With 2 children and 2 growing businesses, life at the Quinn Ranch was busy and chaotic and wonderful. They hired help when needed, but mostly they managed on their own, working as a team and supporting each other through the challenges. Cole's leg still gave him trouble sometimes, especially in cold weather, but he had adapted his work to accommodate it. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Cole and Olivia would sit together and talk about how far they had come. From that desperate day when Olivia was shot to this full, rich life they had built together, it sometimes seemed impossible that it was real. You ever regret it? Olivia asked one such evening. All the plans you had to change because of the accident. Cole pulled her closer. Not for a single second. The accident brought me back to you sooner and everything else grew from there. Maybe I cannot do the work I once did, but I have work I love and a family I adore. How could I regret any of it? When Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 3, they finally had enough money saved to begin building the restaurant Olivia had dreamed about for so long. They constructed it on their property, close to the main road between Clifton and the neighboring towns. It was a simple building with a large kitchen, a dining room with tables for about 20 people, and a small room off the back where travelers could rest if needed. The Quinn Ranch restaurant opened on a Saturday in May, and it was immediately successful. Olivia's reputation as an excellent cook had spread throughout the region, and people came from miles around to try her food. She served simple, hearty meals: roasted chicken and beef, fresh vegetables from her garden, bread baked that morning, pies that became legendary throughout the territory. Cole managed the ranch side of things, raising and training horses while also helping in the restaurant when needed. Thomas, old enough now to have small chores, delighted in helping feed the chickens and collect eggs. Sarah followed her mother around the kitchen, standing on a stool to watch her cook, and already showing signs of inheriting her mother's talent. Life settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and good. They had built something real and lasting, a business that supported them, and a home filled with love. They still worked hard, but it was work they had chosen, work that mattered to them. One evening, nearly 7 years after they had married, Cole and Olivia left the children with Mrs. Crawford and rode out to a spot on their property they both loved, a small rise that overlooked the creek and offered views of the mountains in the distance. They brought a blanket and a basket of food, and they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "You remember what you said to me that night when you told me about your accident?" Olivia asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "I said a lot of things that night. You said forgetting me would be like forgetting to breathe, that it was impossible." Cole smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "I meant every word. I thought about that a lot over the years. Before I met you, I expected to be forgotten. I thought I was the kind of person who just passed through other people's lives without leaving much of an impression. But you changed that. You made me feel seen and valued in a way I never had before. You were always worth seeing, Olivia. I just happened to be smart enough to look." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light fade and the stars begin to appear. Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, all the hardships and joys, the fears and triumphs. It had not been an easy path, but it had been theirs, and she would not change any of it. "I am glad you got shot that day," Cole said suddenly, then laughed at the absurdity of the statement. "That came out wrong. I am not glad you were hurt. But I am glad that day happened because it brought us together. I understand what you mean. Strange how something terrible can lead to something wonderful. You think we would have found each other anyway if that day had not happened?" Olivia considered this. "I think we would have. Maybe it would have taken longer or happened differently, but I think we were meant to find each other." As full darkness settled over the land, they packed up their things and rode back to the cabin. Lights glowed in the windows, and they could see Mrs. Crawford moving about inside, probably getting the children ready for bed. It was a peaceful scene, a picture of home and family and all the things that mattered most. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and growth. The restaurant expanded, and they hired additional help to manage the increased business. Cole's horse breeding program became well known throughout Arizona territory, and he sold horses to ranches and individuals across the region. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with the horses alongside his father. Sarah remained passionate about cooking and spent more and more time in the restaurant kitchen with her mother. When Thomas was 10 and Sarah was 8, Olivia gave birth to another son, Daniel. He was a surprise, as they had thought their family was complete, but a welcome one. Daniel was a happy, easy baby who seemed content to watch the bustle of the ranch and restaurant around him. More years passed, and the children continued to grow. Thomas, at 15, was already as tall as his father and had his same quiet strength. He talked about taking over the horse breeding operation someday, about expanding it even further. Sarah, at 13, was her mother's right hand in the restaurant kitchen, creating her own recipes and dreaming of expanding the menu to include dishes she had read about in the cookbooks she collected. Daniel, at 5, was still young enough to simply enjoy being a child, playing with the ranch dogs and helping wherever he was allowed. Cole and Olivia, now in their early 40s, would sometimes look at each other across the busy restaurant or the ranch yard and marvel at what they had built. It had not been the life either of them had imagined when they were younger, but it was better than anything they could have planned. One afternoon, when the restaurant was quiet between the lunch and dinner rushes, Olivia found Cole in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. She leaned against the stall door, watching him work with the same gentle competence he brought to everything he did. "You remember the day we met?" she asked. Cole looked up with a smile. "Every detail. You were bleeding and stubborn and tried to tell me you could manage on your own. I was terrified that day, not just of the gunshot wound but of accepting help. I had learned to be so self-sufficient that letting someone care for me felt dangerous. What changed? You did. You kept showing up, kept caring even when I gave you every reason to walk away. You taught me that accepting help was not weakness, that letting someone love me did not make me vulnerable in a bad way." Cole set down the brush and came to where Olivia stood, pulling her into his arms. Despite the years, despite the gray threading through his dark hair and the lines around his eyes, he still made her heart race. "You taught me something too," he said. "You taught me what it means to be truly seen by another person, to have someone believe in your potential even when you are not sure you believe in it yourself. When I got hurt on that cattle drive, when everything I thought I was good at was taken away, I could have given up. But you saw possibilities I could not see. You helped me build a life that was different from what I planned but better in every way." "We built it together," Olivia corrected. "Yes, we did. And I would build it again 1,000 times over if it meant spending my life with you." They stood holding each other in the quiet barn, the smell of hay and horses around them, the sounds of the ranch and restaurant a distant backdrop. It was an ordinary moment in many ways, just another afternoon in a life full of ordinary moments. But it was also everything, this simple connection between two people who had found each other against the odds and built something lasting. As they walked back to the house together, they passed by the restaurant where Sarah was already starting preparations for dinner. They could hear Thomas in the corral, working with a young horse, his voice low and patient. Daniel ran past them chasing a chicken, laughing when the bird escaped his grasp. That evening, as had become tradition on Sunday nights, they closed the restaurant early and the whole family gathered for dinner. Olivia made Thomas's favorite pot roast, and Sarah had baked an apple pie. They sat around the big table Cole had built years ago, and everyone talked about their day, their plans, their dreams. After dinner, while the children cleaned up the kitchen, Cole and Olivia went out to the porch. The night was clear and cool, perfect for sitting outside and enjoying the peace after a busy day. "I have been thinking," Cole said. "In a few years, Thomas will probably want to get married, start his own family. We should think about building him a house on the property, maybe over near the creek where the land is level. You are already planning for him to get married. He is only 15. I know, but time moves fast. Feels like yesterday we were bringing him home from town after he was born, and now he is almost a man." Olivia leaned her head on Cole's shoulder. "You are right. Time does move fast. Sometimes I cannot believe it has been nearly 20 years since the day we met." Best 20 years of my life, Cole said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and one of the ranch dogs barked in response. These were the sounds of home, familiar and comforting. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had never come to Clifton? Cole asked. Sometimes. I probably would have found work in another town, lived another version of the same lonely life I was living before I met you. I might have been content, but I would not have been happy. There is a difference. You think you would have stayed alone, probably. After my father died and I dealt with all his debts and disappointments, I convinced myself that being alone was safer. I did not want to depend on anyone or risk being hurt again. If I had never been shot that day, never needed help, I might have kept those walls up forever. I am glad you did not. So am I. More years flowed by like water in the creek that ran through their property, steady and constant. Thomas did indeed get married when he was 21, to a young woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch. True to Cole's word, they built the young couple a house near the creek, and within a year, Cole and Olivia became grandparents to a baby girl named Emma. Sarah, always more focused on the restaurant than on romance, waited until she was 25 to marry. She chose a man named Robert who worked as a supplier for the restaurant, bringing in beef and other goods from ranches throughout the territory. Together they expanded the restaurant even further, adding rooms upstairs where travelers could stay overnight, turning it into a proper inn. Daniel, the baby of the family, was still finding his way at 18. He loved the ranch but was not sure if he wanted to spend his whole life there. Cole and Olivia encouraged him to explore, to travel if he wanted, to figure out what would make him happy. There was no pressure to stay, no expectation that he would follow in his father's or brother's footsteps. Cole and Olivia, now in their 50s, gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of both the ranch and the restaurant. Thomas ran the horse breeding program, and Sarah managed the restaurant and inn. This gave Cole and Olivia time to enjoy their grandchildren and to do some of the things they had always said they would do someday. They took trips to nearby towns they had never visited, went to harvest festivals and horse fairs, spent lazy afternoons reading together on the porch. They had worked so hard for so long that this slower pace felt earned and right. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children surprised them with a party. Friends and neighbors from throughout the region came to celebrate, and the restaurant was filled with laughter and music and good food. At one point during the evening, Sarah stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," she said, raising her glass, "who taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. Who showed us that hard work and determination can turn dreams into reality. Who built something from nothing and created a legacy we are proud to carry forward." Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Cole and Olivia, sitting side by side, their hands clasped together, felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built and the family they had raised. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and the restaurant was quiet, Cole and Olivia sat together in their bedroom. It was a room they had built additions onto over the years as the original cabin grew into a proper house, but it still held pieces of those early days. The quilt Olivia had sewn before they were married, the trunk Cole had brought with him from Texas, the rocking chair where Olivia had nursed all 3 of their babies. 25 years, Olivia said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like no time at all. I know what you mean. I can still remember exactly how you looked that first day, blood on your dress and trying so hard to be brave. I was terrified. Not just of the gunshot wound, but of you, of what it might mean if I let myself care about someone again. Cole pulled her close. I was terrified too. I had been alone for so long that I did not know how to be anything else, but something about you made me want to try. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both of them reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 25 years of marriage, 3 children, grandchildren, a successful business, a home filled with love. It was more than either of them had dared to dream when they were young. You know what I remember most, Olivia said. Not the big moments, though those were wonderful. I remember the small things. The way you always brought me flowers when you came back from town. How you would sit with me in the kitchen while I cooked, even when you had 100 other things to do. The way you held my hand during every birth, every crisis, every moment of fear or doubt. Those small things are the big things, Cole said. They are what a life is really made of. All those tiny moments of choosing each other over and over again. As they prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routines of a quarter-century together, Olivia thought about how lucky she was. She had expected to be forgotten, to live a life on the margins of other people's stories. Instead, she had become the center of her own story, the main character in a love story that was still being written. The years continued to unfold, bringing the joys and sorrows that come with a long life fully lived. Cole's leg bothered him more as he aged, and eventually he needed the cane full-time rather than just for longer distances. Olivia developed arthritis in her hands, making the detailed cooking work harder. But they adapted, found ways to keep doing the things they loved with help from their children and grandchildren. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. The grandchildren kept coming, each one a blessing and a joy. Emma, the eldest, was followed by 3 more from Thomas and Catherine, and 2 from Sarah and Robert. Daniel eventually married and had children of his own, settling on a piece of the property his parents deeded to him. The Quinn Ranch restaurant, an inn, became a landmark in the region, known throughout Arizona for excellent food and warm hospitality. People came from all over to eat Olivia's cooking, and even though Sarah was doing most of the cooking now, everyone still called it Olivia's food because the recipes were all hers. Cole and Olivia entered their 60s still healthy and active, though moving slower than they once had. They spent their days with grandchildren, tending Olivia's garden, watching Cole work with the horses he still loved. They read together in the evenings, sitting side by side in matching rocking chairs Cole had built. On a warm evening in late summer, nearly 40 years after they had first met, Cole and Olivia took one of their evening walks. They moved slowly now, Cole with his cane and Olivia's arm linked through his, but they still enjoyed these quiet moments together. They walked to their favorite spot, the rise overlooking the creek where they had gone on dates when they were young, where they had celebrated anniversaries, where they had shared countless important conversations over the decades. The sun was setting, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors it always had. "You remember the first time we came here?" Olivia asked. "I remember every time we have come here. This spot holds 40 years of our best memories." They stood watching the sunset, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other so completely that words were often unnecessary. Around them, their property stretched in all directions, the evidence of their life's work visible in every building and fence line and tended field. "I have been thinking about something you said to me a long time ago," Olivia said. "That forgetting me would be like forgetting to breathe." "I remember. I meant it then, and I mean it now. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. My whole life I had felt forgettable, like I was just someone people passed by without really seeing. But you saw me. You made me feel like I mattered." Cole turned to face her, his weathered hands gentle as he cupped her face. "You did not just matter, Olivia, you were everything. You are everything. Every good thing in my life flows from that day I met you. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch, the business, all of it exists because you let me love you." "We built it together," Olivia said, as she always did. "Yes, we did. And it has been the greatest privilege of my life." As the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to appear, they walked slowly back to the house. Lights glowed in the windows of the main house and the other buildings scattered across the property where their children and grandchildren lived. It was a beautiful sight, all those lights representing family and connection and love that would extend beyond them into future generations. That night, as they lay in bed, Olivia curled against Cole's side as she had for 40 years. She felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever time they had left, whether it was years or decades, they would spend it together. And when they were gone, they would leave behind something real and lasting. A family, a business, a legacy of love and hard work and choosing each other every single day. "Cole," she whispered into the darkness. "Yes, my love, thank you for not forgetting me." She felt him smile against her hair. "Impossible. You are written into every breath I take." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who had found each other against the odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. From that desperate day in Clifton, when a stray bullet brought them together, to this peaceful night surrounded by family and the fruits of their labor, their love story had unfolded with all the beauty and heartbreak and joy that comes from a life fully shared. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more joys. There would be more grandchildren, the eventual great-grandchildren, the gradual passing of responsibilities to the next generation. But through it all, the foundation they had built would hold strong. A love that began with a simple act of kindness and grew into something that would outlast them both, living on in the family they created and the legacy they left behind. And if you asked anyone in Clifton or the surrounding areas about Cole and Olivia Quinn, they would tell you the same thing, that you never saw one without thinking of the other, that their love story was the kind people told their children and grandchildren, that they proved that sometimes the most extraordinary things come from the most ordinary moments if you are brave enough to reach for them. Olivia had expected to be forgotten, to live a quiet life on the edges of other people's stories. Instead, she had become unforgettable, the center of a love story that would be remembered long after she was gone. And Cole, who had drifted through life without purpose until the day he helped a wounded woman in a dusty street, had found his reason for everything in her eyes. Their story was not perfect. There had been hardships and struggles, pain and loss along the way. But it was real and it was theirs, built from nothing but determination and love and the choice to keep choosing each other even when things got hard. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the circumstances that brought them together, but what they built with the time they had. As dawn broke over the Quinn Ranch on another beautiful Arizona morning, the household began to stir. Grandchildren ran laughing through the yards. The restaurant started preparing for another day of serving travelers and neighbors. The horses whinnied in their corrals, and the cattle grazed peacefully in the fields. And in the main house, Cole and Olivia woke together as they had for 40 years, grateful for another day, another breath, another chance to live the impossible love story that had become their beautiful reality.